What would you do if a cop leaned into your window tonight and said, "I smell alcohol on your breath right now"? Those 5 words have put more innocent people in handcuffs than almost anything else a cop can say, and your next response decides whether you drive home or lose your license, your job, and $10,000 in legal fees. Most people have no idea that the wrong answer to that one sentence can destroy your life even when you haven't had a single drink. Hit that subscribe button right now because what I'm about to show you could save you from a DUI you don't deserve. Cops are trained to trap you with that sentence, and I'm going to give you the exact response that shuts it down before it starts. Here's what you're about to learn: the exact words that block a cop from turning a smell claim into a full DUI investigation. The one thing you must never do when a cop says they smell alcohol, even if you're completely sober. The legal move that forces cops to either prove their case or let you go. And the massive mistake almost every driver makes in the first 30 seconds that guarantees a DUI arrest even when they did nothing wrong. By the end of this video, you'll know more about protecting yourself from a false DUI than 95% of drivers on the road. Let me show you exactly why this moment is so dangerous. When a cop says, "I smell alcohol," they're not just making an observation. They're building a DUI case against you in real time. In police training, they're taught that claiming to smell alcohol gives them reasonable suspicion to expand the traffic stop into a full drunk driving investigation. That means they can ask you to step out of your car, they can make you do field sobriety tests, they can ask you to blow into a breathalyzer, they can make you touch your nose and walk a line on the side of the road while cars fly past you at 60 miles per hour. And here's the scary part: you don't have to be drunk to fail those tests. Sober people fail field sobriety tests all the time because they're nervous, because it's dark, because the ground is uneven, or because they have a medical condition. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and I've seen completely sober people get arrested for DUI because they panicked when a cop said, "I smell alcohol," and then did everything the cop asked them to do. Here's the first tactic: the consent refusal. The moment a cop says, "I smell alcohol," your first response has to be immediate, clear, and calm. You don't pause. You don't look scared. You don't start explaining what you had for dinner. You say this: "Officer, I do not consent to any searches or tests." Those exact words. Memorize that line. Burn it into your brain right now. Here's why it works. When a cop says they smell alcohol, they're trying to get you to agree to a series of tests. Field sobriety tests are voluntary in most states. Preliminary breath tests on the side of the road are voluntary in many states too. But cops never tell you that. They make it sound like you have no choice. They say, "Step out of the car," or "I need you to blow into this real quick." And because it sounds like an order, most people just do it. But the moment you say, "I do not consent," you create a legal record that you did not volunteer. This is 100% legal. You're not resisting. You're not refusing to cooperate. You're exercising a constitutional right. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court every single day. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I only had one drink" when a cop says they smell alcohol. Then the cop now has a confession that you were drinking, uses it as evidence, makes you do field sobriety tests, and now you're under arrest for DUI, even if that one drink was hours ago and you're completely fine. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches or tests." Then the cop has no voluntary agreement from you, and anything they do from that point has to be justified legally or it gets thrown out in court. Still watching? Good. Drop a like if this is already blowing your mind. And if you've ever had a cop claim they smelled alcohol when you hadn't been drinking, drop a comment below because your story might help someone else avoid the same trap. Here's tactic number 2, the field sobriety refusal. This is the one that saves the most people and almost nobody knows about it. When a cop says, "I smell alcohol," and then asks you to step out of the car to do field sobriety tests, they're going to make it sound like you have to. They'll say things like, "I just need you to do a few tests real quick," or "Step out of the car so we can make sure you're okay to drive." Let me show you exactly what to say. You look at the officer calmly and say this: "Officer, I will not perform any field sobriety tests. Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words. Here's why this is so powerful. Field sobriety tests are not mandatory in most states. They are voluntary, but cops are trained to make them feel mandatory. They use casual language so you think you have no choice. The moment you refuse the tests and ask if you're free to leave, you force the cop into a corner. If they say you're free to leave, you leave. The stop is over. If they say you're being detained, they now have to justify that detention with real evidence. And a smell claim alone, especially when you haven't admitted to anything, may not be enough. Former police officers have confirmed this works because field sobriety tests are designed for you to fail. Even sober people fail them. The cop is not trying to prove you're okay to drive. They're trying to collect evidence against you. Bad way. Most drivers say okay and step out of the car when asked to do field sobriety tests. Then they stumble on the uneven ground, the cop writes down "failed to maintain balance," and now there's documented evidence that you're drunk even though you just tripped on a crack in the road. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I will not perform any field sobriety tests. Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the cop has no test results to use against them. And without test results, a DUI case gets extremely weak. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Field sobriety tests exist to build a case against you, not to prove your innocence. The cop already decided you're drunk the moment they said, "I smell alcohol." The tests are just there to collect evidence to support what they already believe. Here's tactic number 3, the silence shield. This might be the most important tactic in this entire video. When a cop says, "I smell alcohol," they're going to start asking you questions. Where are you coming from? Have you been drinking tonight? How many drinks did you have? When was your last drink? Listen closely because this is critical. Every single one of those questions is designed to get you to confess. Even saying, "I had one drink with dinner," is a confession. Even saying, "I was at a bar but I wasn't drinking," is a confession that you were at a bar. Everything you say becomes evidence. So here's what you say instead. "Officer, I am exercising my right to remain silent. I will not answer questions without an attorney present." Those exact words. This is 100% legal. The Fifth Amendment gives you the right to remain silent, and you can use it at any time during a traffic stop. You don't have to wait until you're arrested. You don't have to wait until they read you your rights. You can invoke it the moment a cop starts asking questions about drinking. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I just had 2 beers with dinner," when asked if they've been drinking. Then the cop writes down admitted to consuming 2 alcoholic beverages, uses that as evidence, and now you have a recorded confession that you were drinking before driving. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I am exercising my right to remain silent. I will not answer questions without an attorney present." Then the cop has no statements, no confessions, and no admission of drinking to use against them. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Your right to remain silent is not a suggestion. It's a constitutional protection that the highest court in the country says you can use at any time. Here's the reality. Cops are trained to keep you talking because the longer you talk, the more likely you are to say something they can use against you. Silence stops that entire process. Most people already clicked away by now. If you're still here, you're in the top 10% of drivers who actually care about protecting their rights. Drop a comment saying, "I'm still here," so I know who's serious about this. Here's tactic number 4, the window control. This one is simple, but it stops the alcohol claim before it even starts. When a cop walks up to your car, you only have to roll your window down enough to hear them and hand over your documents. You do not have to roll it all the way down. You crack the window about 2 inches. You have your license and registration ready. You hand them through the gap. If the cop says roll the window down all the way, you say this: "Officer, I can hear you fine and I can provide my documents. Is there a legal reason you need the window fully open?" Those exact words. Here's why this matters. A cracked window makes it much harder for a cop to claim they smell alcohol on your breath. The less air flowing out of your car, the weaker the smell claim. Bad way. Most drivers roll the window all the way down the moment the cop walks up. Then the cop leans in, claims he smells alcohol, and now the entire DUI investigation starts before you even know what happened. Good way. Smart drivers keep the window cracked and say, "Officer, I can hear you fine and I can provide my documents. Is there a legal reason you need the window fully open?" Then the cop has no easy way to claim a smell, and the DUI investigation never even starts. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because it prevents the smell claim before the cop can even make it. Watch what happens when you control the window. You control the entire interaction from the very first second. Now let's talk about the legal framework behind all of this. There are 3 court cases you need to know. First, Birchfield versus North Dakota. The Supreme Court said cops cannot force you to take a blood test without a warrant. In plain English, a cop cannot stick a needle in your arm just because they think you've been drinking. They need a judge to sign off first. Second, Missouri versus McNeely. The court said cops can't bypass the warrant requirement just because they think evidence might disappear. In 7th grade English, that means a cop can't say we need to test you now before the alcohol wears off without getting a warrant. They still have to follow the rules. Third, Rodriguez versus United States. The Supreme Court said cops cannot extend a traffic stop longer than necessary to handle the original reason for the stop. In simple terms, if you got pulled over for a broken taillight, the cop can't keep you there for 30 extra minutes doing DUI tests unless they have real evidence. These cases are the armor behind every tactic I taught you. When you refuse tests, when you stay silent, and when you ask if you're free to leave, you're not making things up. You're quoting the Supreme Court. Let's walk through a real scenario so you can see how this plays out step by step. You're driving home from a friend's house at 11 o'clock at night. You had dinner there, but you didn't drink anything. You're going 12 miles over the limit because you're tired and ready to get home. Lights flash behind you. You pull over. You crack your window about 2 inches. You have your license and registration ready. The cop walks up and asks for your documents. You hand them through the gap. So far, this is completely normal. Then the cop leans toward the window and says, "I smell alcohol coming from your vehicle." Here's the wrong way. Most drivers panic. They roll the window down further. They start explaining. They say, I just came from a friend's house. I wasn't drinking, I swear. The cop writes down, admitted to being at a social gathering, and claimed not to be drinking. Then the cop says, step out of the car for some tests. The driver says, okay. They step out on an uneven road in the dark. They stumble on the walk the line test because they're nervous and the ground is cracked. The cop writes down, failed to maintain balance and appeared unsteady on feet. Then the cop says, blow into this. The driver blows. The number is low, but not zero because of mouthwash. Now the cop has a breath test result, failed field sobriety tests, and a statement about being at a friend's house. The driver gets arrested for DUI. They spend the night in jail. They hire a lawyer for $5,000. Their license gets suspended. Their insurance doubles. All because they talked, did the tests, and rolled the window down. Here's the right way. The cop says, I smell alcohol. You stay calm. You say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches or tests. The cop pauses. He says, come on. If you haven't been drinking, just do a quick test to prove it. You say, Officer, I will not perform any field sobriety tests. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? The cop now has to make a decision. He can detain you, which means he needs real evidence beyond a smell claim through a cracked window, or he can let you go. Then the cop starts asking questions. Where are you coming from? Have you been drinking? You say, Officer, I am exercising my right to remain silent. I will not answer questions without an attorney present. Now the cop has nothing. No confession, no test results, no statements, no admission, just a smell claim through a 2-inch window gap. Without anything else to support the claim, the cop hands back your license. He writes you a ticket for speeding. You drive home. Watch what happens when you know your rights. The entire power dynamic shifts. The cop goes from being in total control to being the one who has to justify every single move. Here's the reality. Most cops won't push past a clear, calm refusal because they know it won't hold up in court. They're looking for easy targets who panic and hand over their rights without a fight. When you show them you know the law, they move on to someone who doesn't. Next video, I'm revealing what to say when cops bring a breathalyzer to your car and threaten to suspend your license if you refuse. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because that video exposes the biggest threat cops use to force you into blowing. That video drops in 3 days, and it might be the most important one I ever make. Let me recap everything fast. Say, I do not consent to any searches or tests the moment a cop claims to smell alcohol. Refuse field sobriety tests because they're voluntary and designed for you to fail. Invoke your right to remain silent and stop answering questions about drinking. And keep your window cracked to prevent the smell claim before it even starts. Your rights only work if you use them, and now you know exactly what to say. Hit subscribe so you catch that breathalyzer refusal video before it drops in 3 days. Smash that like button if this just saved you from a future DUI arrest. And drop a comment telling me which tactic you're going to use first next time you get pulled over. Stay safe out there.